Hey! Excuse me, that is not allowed.
Let's go to Stratford.
No, I've been dancing.
Oh yeah? Agree to stop now. Oh yeah, no. Yes, thank you.
That's my daily prayer.
Amen.
Great Abraka.
That's it.
No, me. It's okay like that. Okay. There's a way to fight. There's a way it's going to be.
Oh, yeah, that's the percent,
Doctor Mrs. Member, Amaigbo,
This was the moment they'd all been waiting for. The kiss that said it all. Prince William and his bride, the new Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, sent the crowds into a frenzy as they sealed their marriage with a very public show of love. 1 million people had converged on Buckingham Palace to share their happiness. 2 billion people were watching around the world. It was a day that brought a smile to everyone's face. Outside Westminster Abbey, the crowds had begun to gather from early morning. Some hardy souls had spent the past 3 nights camping out to ensure they had the best possible view.
I've been to their wedding to Queen when she was a youngster. I've followed up with Princess Diana, Margaret, and I'm here today for William. I believe in the royal family.
Oh, I'm here just to experience the whole thing, to see the pomp and the circumstance, and, you know, just to be here and get the feeling of the crowd and the excitement. I love it.
Everyone wanted a ringside seat as Prince William finally tied the knot with Catherine Middleton, the girl he'd met and fallen in love with almost 10 years earlier. A mile or so away, in a luxury suite at the Goring Hotel, the bride and her family were getting ready. Around the corner at Buckingham Palace, the rather grey early morning revealed a quiet calm. But behind the palace walls, the well-oiled machinery of an occasion such as this was already in action. Outside the palace and down the Mall, the crowds who'd spent the night in makeshift tents were beginning to stir. The mood was one of growing excitement at the prospect of the pageantry and partying that was to follow. The doommongers who had predicted that no one would care about the royal wedding were about to be proved comprehensively wrong. At the Abbey, everything was now in place. At William and Catherine's request, 8 imposing trees, maples and hornbeams, had been brought in from the royal estates to mark their route up the aisle. In the splendour of this 1,000-year-old royal peculiar, as it's known, meaning that it's neither a cathedral nor a parish church, 38 sovereigns have been crowned, including, of course, our present Queen. And this was to be the 16th royal wedding to be held at Westminster Abbey. The Queen herself was married here, as was her mother and her sister Margaret. By 9 o'clock, the first of the 1,900 guests had begun to arrive. With roads around the whole area sealed off, they'd been asked to allow plenty of time to get to the Abbey. And this was certainly an occasion that no one wanted to miss. All of them felt privileged to be there to witness a moment in history, the marriage of our future king to a girl who'll one day be Queen Consort. The ushers would have their work cut out, seating 1,000 family and friends of the bride and groom, 50 members of the British royal family, 40 foreign royals, 60 governors-general and prime ministers from around the world, and some 200 diplomats and government officials. 80 representatives from Prince William's charities were also amongst those invited to the society event of the decade. And of course, the fashion stakes were high. Everyone had put in a huge amount of effort, some with more success than others. The fashion expert James Sherwood was among those who cast a critical eye over the results.
The press were sometimes less than kind, but I actually think the occasion was incredibly well dressed. As far as British millinery is concerned, I think the royal wedding has demonstrated that the hat is, if not making a comeback, it's certainly triumphant. And actually what we did see in Westminster Abbey were hats that take a lot of, I don't know, it takes a lot of poise to wear these hats, and it takes a lot of commitment. You know, when one looks at the Queen, formal day dress is the Queen's working wardrobe, but for 90% of the women in the Abbey, this was an exception to a rule and something that they really had to rise to the occasion, and they certainly did. It's rather nice for me to see an occasion like the royal wedding where the uniforms are perfect, the mourning tales are perfect, and the ladies have made a terrific effort. We read from the invitation that it was mourning tales, lounge suits and uniforms were all acceptable, but it's rather nice to see that the chaps came down in favour of uniform and mourning tales. And also, you know, we see a lot of RAF uniform because Prince William's currently serving with the RAF in emergency search and rescue. I think what stood out for me at the royal wedding, that it was just lovely to see well-dressed people who know exactly what they're doing, they know how to behave, they're dressed in their best. And you can see waving the Dowager Duchess of Devonshire, Deborah Mitford, the last of the Mitford sisters, with her daughter-in-law, the present Duchess of Devonshire. I always love to see the dowagers because they're almost like galleons sailing forth in the Abbey. It's heaven for me to see, you know, all the pearl chokers with the amethyst clasps and all the classic British family jewels coming out, and see the chaps make the best of themselves too, because I defy any woman to say that a man doesn't look very handsome in a morning coat, especially if it's cut by Savile Row. And Prince Harry's beau, Chelsea Davy, from Cape Town, looking terribly Cape Town, in a sort of Alberta Ferretti cocktail dress, which is almost off the shoulder. Almost as acceptable. Off the shoulder is absolutely not, particularly for Westminster Abbey. She's wearing quite a dinky little, it's almost like a button of a hat, designed by Victoria Grant, who I believe is also a favourite of the Duchess of Cambridge.
William and Catherine had been careful not to make this a celebrity event, but a handful of their famous friends were invited. Among them, David and Victoria Beckham.
I think David Beckham's made many a heart swoon as he walked up the Abbey with the new hairstyle, the Elvis, the quiff. Unusual to see a cravat. Mr. Beckham pulls this off, of course, with his usual style. He's wearing Ralph Lauren, almost bespoke, made to measure, I think we'd call it. Mrs. Beckham with the dress for the Victoria Beckham label. A lot of the press thought it was black and made appropriate comments saying that, you know, she looked as though she was in mourning. It's not, it's a midnight blue silk. She is pregnant and I think she looks absolutely magnificent.
Elton John was there.
I thought it was rather marvellous that the lion's share of the chaps in the Abbey actually wore mourning tales. I mean, even Sir Elton John and his partner David Furnish.
The film director Guy Ritchie is a friend of both William and Catherine.
And here we have Guy Ritchie, who's played it incredibly safe, wearing a terribly traditional black morning coat with the pinstripe trouser and the grey waistcoat. Grey or buff waistcoats are really the form for formal day dress, but at the wedding we did see these wonderful, quite bright yellow waistcoats that seemed to set a fashion. It was terrific to see. We know that the Queen has let it be known that she rather likes morning coats to be buttoned. She doesn't like them to be left unbuttoned.
Tara Palmer-Tompkinson, an old family friend, seemed intent on making quite a fashion statement.
And the socialite Tara Palmer-Tompkinson in this electric blue number that really is off the shoulder. And this sort of boat-shaped hat that points directly down on her nose. It's a very similar shape to Princess Eugenie's, both designed by Philip Tracy. In fact, one would go so far as to say that Philip Tracy probably had a patent on the entire wedding.
Ben Fogle, the TV presenter and adventurer, made a documentary with William in Africa and has since become a friend. For his heavily pregnant wife, Marina, the biggest worry of the day was that she would go into labour.
Ben Fogle, the television presenter, a very popular sight in the Abbey. I do love that sort of crazy public school hair. Other nationalities would think it looked a bit sloppy, but actually to the Brits that's perfectly puck.
Also among the guests at the Abbey, the journalist Tom Bradby, who's known the couple for some time and who was invited to conduct their engagement interview. His wife, Claudia, is a jewellery designer, and she once worked with Catherine. The Prime Minister, David Cameron, wore traditional morning dress, but his wife, Samantha, surprised fashion pundits by choosing to go hatless.
The green Burberry dress I did think looked absolutely appropriate. Wouldn't it have been so much better to have seen a hat with that ensemble?
The Deputy Prime Minister, Nick Clegg, and his wife, Miriam, played it safe.
It was interesting that all the British politicians dithered about wearing morning tails because they thought it would possibly make them look slightly upper class. Actually, it just makes you look terribly well dressed, as in the case of Nick Clegg, the leader of the Liberal Democrat Party and the Deputy Prime Minister. Sir John Major dresses to prove why he absolutely did belong in the Abbey in an immaculate black morning coat. And you notice the British gentlemen always mismatch, and so Sir John Major, we see the sort of baby blue tie, the very faded pink shirt and the grey waistcoat. It's actually spot on, totally correct. And it's always rather nice to see the foreign royals out in full force. The King of Tonga is an incredibly popular figure. You notice that he wore a double-breasted morning coat. It's almost more cut like a frock coat, which is most unconventional, but actually it dates back to the Edwardian era.
The last great occasion to be held in the Abbey was the funeral of the Queen Mother in 2002. And 5 years earlier, the Abbey had been the venue for one of the most traumatic events in Prince William's life, the funeral of his mother, Diana, Princess of Wales. But now his friends, colleagues and family were gathering for a day that signalled a new and bright chapter in William's life. But a day when, no doubt, his mother's absence would be felt more poignantly than ever. Grand royal occasions like this are timed to the minute, and at 10:10, the crowds outside Clarence House knew that William was about to set out on his final journey as a single man. A burgundy Bentley, polished to perfection, rolled out of the gates. At last, the real show was about to get on the road. And what a show it was. Prince William looked distinguished in the famous red uniform of the Irish Guards, of which he's an honorary colonel. Having served with the Army, Navy and the RAF, he was eligible to wear any of their ceremonial uniforms, but he chose the Guards' striking red tunic with his blue garter sash and star and his RAF wings.
And we see Prince William looking rather dashing in the uniform of an honorary colonel in the Irish Guards. It had been rumoured for months that he would be wearing an RAF uniform tailored by Heaves and Hawks of Savile Row. This would have been in keeping because his great-grandfather, the late King George VI, wore RAF uniform and had permission from George V to wear it because it's not the uniform of the senior service.
Prince Harry, his best man, looked equally dashing in the uniform of a captain of the Household Cavalry, Blues and Royals.
Prince Harry, tailored by Dejan Skinner, is wearing the uniform of the Blues and Royals. He and his brother were painted for a National Portrait Gallery piece 2 years ago, wearing the uniform of the Blues and Royals. So it was rumoured that both of the chaps would wear the same uniform. I think it's rather wise that Prince William chose instead to wear the Irish Guards.
For some of the more stalwart royal fans who'd spent the night on a hard, cold London pavement, this was their second encounter with the princes A handful had been able to chat with them the night before, when William and Harry had suddenly come out of Clarence House to thank the crowds for their support and good wishes. This was very much part of the younger generation steering a new course. Later, it was revealed that Harry and William had made the decision on a whim and caught their press office by surprise. Now, as he made his way to the Abbey, to a crescendo of cheers, William might well have been feeling more than the few nerves he'd admitted to the night before. "All I have to do is get my lines right," he'd told the crowds. An obvious reference to his parents' own wedding, when they'd both fluffed their lines. The reality of his wedding day, though, was proving that this was truly a global event. People had come from all over the world to watch the procession and join in the celebrations. As the princes approached Horse Guards, the band of the Coldstream Guards salute. One day it will fall to William as sovereign to take the salute here at the annual Trooping the Colour Parade. As the Princess of Wales once told me, the prospect of being king was something her son viewed as a great burden when he was young. Since then, Prince William has become resigned to his destiny, and perhaps now, as the crowds showed their real affection for him, it didn't seem so bad. And how proud Diana would have been of her two boys, now all grown up and so handsome. As they approached the Abbey, the bells rang out, and the crowds who'd been waiting patiently got their first look at the man of the moment. Both William and Harry seemed a little overwhelmed by it all, wringing their hands as the nerves began to jangle. They paused at the door to take off their hats and gloves and to sort out their hair. They were greeted by the Dean of Westminster, the Very Reverend Dr. John Hall. As they shook hands with other members of the Abbey chapter, the princes began to relax and enjoy themselves. Prince Harry had promised to embarrass his big brother with his best man speech later in the day, but for now his role was to support William through one of the biggest moments of his life. After a few last words of advice from the Dean, William and Harry began the long walk up the aisle, nodding greetings to the assembled guests as they went. At their side was a man they've known for many years. Sir Stephen Lamport, now the Receiver General at the Abbey, was private secretary to Prince Charles during the difficult years of Diana's death and beyond. A familiar face to help put William at ease. A kiss for his aunt, Diana's sister, Lady Sarah McCorquodale. Another moment when Diana herself seemed so palpably missing. And he seemed reasonably relaxed as he exchanged a few words with some of his family and friends. Next to arrive at the Abbey was the bride's mother, Carol Middleton. Accompanying her on the short drive from the hotel where they'd been helping Catherine with her final preparations, her son, James. He had been given the honour, as perhaps a sibling at any other wedding would, of being invited to read the lesson at the service. Carol's outfit won universal approval, including from James Sherwood.
Carol Middleton made a very astute choice. She's wearing Catherine Walker, a great favourite of the late Diana, Princess of Wales. She also chose this wonderful powdery blue, which is genius because you know that the senior members of the royal family have to wear colour blocks. You don't compete with it. You know, you have to take a step back. And in the case of the Middletons, I think they were absolutely pitch perfect in the way that they dressed and the way they behaved at the wedding. As well as, I think, doing a remarkable job reading the lesson at the wedding, James Middleton looked simply immaculate. That was terrific tailoring, courtesy of Eden Ravenscroft, the oldest tailor on Savile Row.
At Buckingham Palace, the crowds were warming up for their end of the spectacle. It began in rather a humble way, with a fleet of rented minibuses to transport all but the most senior members of the family. It's not the first time buses have been used. They were hired in for Charles and Camilla's nuptials. It was all part of a conscious effort to minimise security and keep costs down. But the buses were also a sign of the times as the monarchy embraces the 21st century. The crowds cheered as the convoy made its way to the Abbey, and most of the family looked amused to have arrived by a rather novel mode of royal transport. For a woman who was once an air stewardess and is certainly not used to rubbing shoulders with kings and queens, Carol Middleton showed surprisingly few signs of nerves. She was a model of elegance and composure as she made her way to her place in the Abbey. But her thoughts must surely have been with her daughter, who was about to step out of ordinary life for good and into a world only a very select few can ever experience.
We can see Lady Helen Taylor and her husband Tim Taylor, the art dealer, she wearing a rather beautiful blue coat embroidered on the hem. And it's a rather nice and rare sight to see the Duchess of Kent wearing a very powdery pink, demure and incredibly appropriate outfit for a royal wedding.
The Gloucesters were just behind them. Princess Michael of Kent, Princess Alexandra with her son James Ogilvy. Among the younger generation of royals, Zara Phillips with her fiancé Mike Tyndall. Theirs will be the next royal wedding.
And Lady Sarah Chatto, the daughter of the late Princess Margaret, is arguably the best dressed at the royal wedding, wearing a ripplingly simple flying saucer hat. Lady Sophie Windsor, wearing a very severely chic midnight blue suit with the flying saucer hat worn to an angle, which is important when you're a member of the royal family because you have to be seen.
Peter Phillips and his wife Autumn. Meanwhile, at Clarence House, the crowds were craning their necks to get a good view of the gleaming Rolls-Royce Phantom 4 that was taking Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall to the wedding. It was 6 years since their own marriage at Windsor Guildhall. This was a day for a father's pride to swell, as he and Camilla saw for themselves the sheer number of well-wishers, now standing 20 deep, who'd come to celebrate with William.
The Prince of Wales, so his tailors reliably informed me, had put on a little bit of muscle for the wedding, so he couldn't wear his Admiral's full-dress uniform. And Malcolm Plews, who's the head cutter of Welsh and Jeffreys, one of the greatest tailors on the row, recut his uniform, the Admiral's full dress, within about 4 or 5 days, which is a record, and then recycled the gold lace from the uniform and trimmed the new uniform with it. This is very interesting because the royal family are known to recycle fashion on a fairly regular basis. Princess Anne is famous for it.
But it was the rather individual fashion taste of Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie which drew more comment than almost anything else. The girls arrived with their father, the Duke of York, closely followed by the Earl and Countess of Wessex.
I do think the Duke of York's daughters were rather unkindly criticised considering their age. It's terribly difficult to wear formal day dress when you're a girl in her teens or early 20s. And these girls obviously want to dress like young girls. They want to have fun with fashion. And unfortunately, they probably won't be able to if every time they want to experiment with a mad Philip Tracy hat or, in Princess Eugenie's case, a Vivienne Westwood dress, they get the world's press at them. And actually, Princess Beatrice is wearing a rather marvellous nude-coloured Valentino couture coat. I mean, it's a really lovely piece. The Countess of Wessex is quite simply the best-dressed member of the royal family. You can see the champagne silk suit that's very 1950s. It's elaborate, but it doesn't shout at you. And then she supports a new milliner called Jane Taylor. Princess Anne has always been a maverick. She's a horsewoman, she's a hard-working woman. I think she might mildly enjoy fashion, but she dresses more as a royal should dress rather than as a fashion plate. So you will never see her looking inappropriate. She might make interesting choices occasionally, but it is always in the spirit of dressing as a senior member of the royal family.
At Buckingham Palace, the departure of the Queen and Duke. Her chosen colour for this spring day, primrose yellow.
And the Queen wore a dazzling primrose yellow coat dress designed by Angela Kelly. Mrs. Kelly is the Queen's dresser, personal assistant and curator of dress and jewellery. She's the first lady to ever be appointed a personal assistant to the Queen. And many of the Queen's dresses and ensembles have been commissioned in-house. We're told that they're in-house palace designs. So this includes the hats as well as the dresses and coat dresses. The 3-strand pearl necklace that the Queen wears and invariably does wear when she's wearing formal day dress was given to her by her grandfather George V in 1935 to celebrate his silver jubilee.
At the Abbey, Prince Charles and the Duchess were given a warm welcome by the crowds. Camilla looked a little nervous, but her elegant costume was voted a winner.
And the Duchess of Cornwall was looking increasingly like a Queen consort. She's wearing an Anna Valentine coat and dress in a very sort of simple silk, but look at the incredible embroidery, the beautiful work, but it yet doesn't overwhelm and it doesn't shout, "Look at me." I mean, it's the perfect dress for the stepmother of the bridegroom. And Philip Tracy shows that he can create maximum wonderful millinery with this wonderful piece with the great big broad brim upturned so you see the Duchess's face. And the Duchess of Cornwall was rather fortunate to have been loaned various pieces of jewellery from the Queen Mother's collection, and we can see one particular piece dazzling on her lapel. The brooch that the Queen's wearing is a very special and sentimental piece. It's called the Lover's Knot bow. It was set for Queen Mary, the Queen's grandmother, in the Art Nouveau style of this sinuous curve of diamonds. I mean, the Queen has possibly the most magnificent, if not precious, private jewellery collection in the world. And you'll notice that the Queen's jewellery, she always says something with it. It's entirely sentimental. If you look at her earrings, there are tiny pearl and diamond studs that were given to her by Queen Mary, her grandmother. She wears them every day of her life, unless for a state occasion such as a state dinner. She wears them every day.
On to Horse Guards Parade and the Royal Salute. The Rolls, a 1950 model which was presented to the Queen when she was Princess Elizabeth, made its way through the arch and into the tilt yard. The state trumpeter marked the departure of the Queen and Duke from Buckingham Palace. The huge crowds must have reminded them of the scenes at the Golden Jubilee celebrations 9 years earlier, when 1 million people thronged around the palace to mark the 50th anniversary of the Queen's reign. Today, though, they were proud grandparents above all else, and happy to let William and Catherine take centre stage. By now, the bridesmaids were en route. 4 little girls and 2 page boys, with Catherine's sister Pippa as maid of honour. What a day for them all. Three-year-old Grace Van Kutsen, William's goddaughter, and Camilla's granddaughter, also 3, Eliza Lopez. Behind them, the 7-year-old daughter of the Earl and Countess of Wessex, Lady Louise Windsor, and Viscount Linley's 8-year-old daughter, Margarita Armstrong-Jones. The page boys were Tom Pettifer, the son of William's former nanny, Tiggy Burke, and Billy Lowther Pinkerton, the son of William's private secretary. A fanfare from the state trumpeters of the Household Cavalry marked the Queen's arrival at the Abbey. A welcome from the Dean of Westminster in his magnificent gold cope,